Hello and most welcome to 1918 of the H series. We are most definitely approaching the magnificent 2000s. Hooray! Hooray! Wow! Merely 80 left. And we are delving deeper and deeper into Wittgenstein. And today we will continue. It will be the third take on Paul Feyerabend's writing about Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations. Last time, 1916, we looked deeply into the different T's. T is the philosophical idea of essentialism, T, and we looked at the arguments for T as propounded by Wittgenstein in PI. A lot of acronyms there. And one great outtake there was the crystalline purity. And I do recognize this. We are most often under the spell of the crystalline purity of something or other. It is as clear as it gets. And this crystalline conception can be removed by turning the whole examination round, going from T to T. T. Wittgenstein, I'll call it, his own theory that doesn't exist. And we had some funny things. There is a humor embedded in page 452. He calls reading a family resemblance because they are so different. You focus on different things. You move your head, your eyes in different ways. The subject of the reading could be so different as to be signs, it could be figures, it could be symbols, scribbles. They all have the family resemblance of reading. And I would say, imply there that they all have some essential together in the some essential property in common. And that is usually called mental process of reading, an extra add-on. So all things could be different. There's nothing much in common between reading Hebrew and reading mathematical equations or symbols. But they're all covered with the essence, mental process of reading. And that is very close to the family resemblance of games. They are all part of one big family. No one would doubt that they are a family of games, but the far outer reaches, they share little, if anything. For instance, being in the playground, playing in the playground, and doing some advanced computer game. The distance is just too great. It could also be called a physiological process. That is not referring to the activity, but rather some mysterious eye to synaptic nerve to synaptic vision center in the brain. They are all activities, of course, with family resemblance, just as a family consists of cousins, uncles, distant uncles, and fourth cousins. We will now continue on page 453. It's about 14 lines or 15 lines down from the third paragraph, just after the parenthesis CF 160. It is clear that in a case like that, we should rather alter some physiological hypotheses. Excuse me. Let's try airing here. Sorry about that. If again that P read Ali with totalitarianism, but did not read afterward either, although anybody who observed the outer behavior of P would be inclined to say that P had been reading the whole time. For it is quite possible that the reading process should be present only when P is uttering Ali. It seems, however, that it is quite meaningless to hypothesize that in the circumstances described, a person was reading only for 1 second or 2, so that his uttering of sounds in the presence of printed paper before or after that period must not be called reading, which is C, to the failure of attempts A and B to discover the essence of reading, certain philosophers will answer in the following way. Certainly, that was to be expected. For reading is a mental process, and the only real criterion for anybody's reading is the conscious act of reading, the act of reading the sounds of from the letters. A man surely knows whether he is reading or only pretending to read. The idea to which they are alluding is this: just as the sensation red is present when we are looking at a red object, so a specific mental process, the reading process, henceforth acronymed MRP, is present in the mind when we do the reading, when we are reading. The MRP is the object of our analysis of reading. Its presence makes our overt behavior a manifestation of reading. As already indicated in T4. In short, it is thought that this mental process will enable us to solve problems which we could not solve when considering material processes only. When our language suggests a body and there is none, there we should like there we should like to say is a spirit. But it will turn out that mental processes are subject to the same kind of criticism as material processes. That neither a material nor a spiritual mechanism enables us to explain how it is that words are meaningful and that the meanings can be known. That in pointing to mental processes, we cling to the same scheme of explanation as in the physiological or the behavioristic theory of meaning, without realizing that we are doing so. That can be shown by very simple means. Consider the case of a person who does not look at any printed paper, who is walking up and down, looking out of the window and behaving as if he were expecting somebody to come. That the MRP is going on in his mind, in his consciousness. Should we take the presence of this mental process as a sufficient criterion for the person's reading, adding perhaps that we had discovered a hitherto unknown case of reading? Reading. It is clear that we should alter rather some psychological hypotheses. That is the hypothesis that reading is always correlated with MRP. MRP, what is it? But the last argument is a simple transformation of the first argument of section B with MRP. The mental process, which is supposed to be the essence of reading, substituted for RP, the physiological process, which was supposed to be the essence of reading in section B. By this substitution, the second argument can be used for the present purpose as well. Let us now turn to a more detailed investigation of the matter. Let us first ask whether really every act of reading is accompanied by the MRP. A few minutes ago, I was reading the newspaper. Do I remember any particular mental process which was present all the time I was reading? I was reading. I remember that I was expecting a friend. Actually, I looked at my watch several times and that I was angry because he did not come, although he had promised to do so. I also remember having thought of an excellent performance of Don Giovanni, which I had seen a few days ago, which had impressed me very much. Don Giovanni! Then I found a funny misprint and was amused. I also considered whether the milk which I had put on the fire was already boiling, etc. Nevertheless, I was reading all the time, and it is quite certain that I was. But no, now notice this. While I'm reading, everything is quite simple. Simple, simple, simple. So simple. I notice nothing special. But afterward, when I ask myself what it was that happened, it seems to have been something indescribable. Indescribable. Afterward, no description satisfies me. It is as if I could not believe that I merely looked, made such and such a face, and uttered words. But I do not. But don't I remember anything else? No. No. The same applies to activities such as calculating, drawing a picture, copying a blueprint, etc. I know, of course, that I was reading, but that shows only that my knowledge is not based on the memory of certain sensations, impressions, or the like, because there was no such impression. Impression. Impression.
Impression. Impression.
Microphone. Okay, welcome, Echo. We did have a microphone. Where's the computer? Compare now another example. Look at the mark brudde and let a sound occur to you as you do so. Utter it. Let us assume it has the sound U. 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 Now read the sentence. Diana is beautiful, is a beautiful girl. Was it in a different way that the perception of you or oh in you in beautiful led to the utterance of the sound you in the second case. Of course, there was a difference. For I read the second sentence where I did not read when I uttered the you in the presence of the you. But is this difference a difference of mental content? That is, am I able to discover a specific sensation, impression, or the like which was present in the second case and missing in the first case, whose presence made the second case a case of reading? Of course, there were many differences. In the first case, I had told myself beforehand that I was to let a sound occur to me. There was a certain tension present, present, present. Before the sound came. And I did not say you automatically, as I do when I look at the letter U. Further, that mark, the U, was not familiar to me in the way the letters of the alphabet are. I looked at it rather intently and with a certain interest in its shape. But imagine now a person who has the feeling described above in the presence of a normal English text. Composed of ordinary letters. being invited to read, he thinks that he is supposed to utter sounds just as they occur to him, one sound for each letter, and he nevertheless utters all the sounds a normal person would utter when reading the text. Should we say in such a case that he was not really reading the passage? The passage. The passage. Should we here allow his sensations to count as the criterion for his reading or not reading? Not reading. What do you say? What about that? From the negative answer to this question, we have to conclude that even if we were able to discover a difference between the way in which the perception of the you leads to the utterance of the sound you, and in the way in which, for instance, the perception of you within beautiful leads to the utterance of the you. This difference, if it is difference of mental content, of behavior, etc., cannot be interpreted as justifying the assumption of an essential difference between cases of reading and not reading. Not reading. B. It may be objected to this analysis that the MRP is sometimes present quite distinctly. Read a page of print and you can see that something special is going on, something highly characteristic. This is true especially where we make a point of reading slowly, perhaps in order to see what does happen if we read. What does happen? Thus, one could be inclined to say that the MRP is a subconscious process which accompanies every case of reading, but which can be brought to light only by a special effort. Answer 1. Reading with the intention of finding out what happens when we are reading is a special case of reading, and as such different from ordinary reading. Nevertheless, reading without this intention is also a case of reading, which shows that the reason for calling it a case of reading cannot be the presence of a sensation which admittedly is present only in special cases and not in the case discussed. Finally, the description of the MRP cannot be a description of reading in general, for the ordinary case is omitted. Omitted echo. Where are you? Omitted. Omitted. We should not be misled by the picture which suggests that this phenomenon comes in sight on close inspection. If I am supposed to describe how an object looks from far off, I don't make the description more accurate by saying what can be noticed about the object on closer inspection. Two, not every kind of introspection is judged in the same way. It is possible that the person who is supposed to find the MRP by introspection, being tired, should experience and describe quite unusual things, thinking all the time that the task which was set him by the psychologist, is being performed by giving these descriptions. Descriptions. No psychologist will welcome such a result. Instead of thinking that a new and illuminating facts about reading have been discovered, he will doubt the reliability of the guinea pig.
Guinea pig.
The guinea pig, indeed. Försöksråtta. Oh dear, poor animal. What can we do? From this, we have to conclude once more that the sensations experienced in connection with reading, and even those experienced as the essence of reading by the readers themselves, have nothing whatever to do with the question what reading really is. Three, let us now assume that a reliable observer whom we ask to read attentively and to tell us what happens while he is reading, provides us with the following report. The utterance is connected with seeing the signs, as if I were guided by the perception of the letters, etc. Does he, when answering our question in this way, describe a mental content as a person who is seeing red and who tells us that he is seeing red, describes a mental content Does he say, I am being guided by the letters? Because the mental content being guided is present. Then one would have to conclude that every case of being guided is accompanied by being guided, as we assumed at the beginning of section C. That every case of reading is accompanied by the MRP. MRP! But this last assumption has already been refuted. And the other, being completely analogous to it, can be refuted by the same arguments. We have to conclude, therefore, that the possibility of describing the process of reading as a case of being guided does not imply that reading is a mental process, because being guided is not one. C, as already indicated, people usually try to escape from argument C by assuming that the MRP is a subconscious sensation which has to be brought to light by introspection. A different form of the same escape is the following one. The arguments that have been brought forward so far assume that reading and the MRP can be separated from one another. This, however, is not the case. Reading is inseparably connected with the MRP. What occurs separately from reading is not the MRP, but only an erroneous interpretation of something as reading. But how are we to decide whether the MRP itself is present or only something else erroneously interpreted as reading? Or what comes to the same thing? how are we to decide whether we are reading or only believing that we are reading? The given content of consciousness cannot be used for deciding that question, for it is its reliability which is to be ascertained. The only possible alternative is to call a sensation a case of the MRP, if and only if it is accompanied by reading. But now we assume, contrary to our previous assumption, that we do possess a criterion for reading other than a sensation. Another argument against the assumption of a hidden mental content, which may be brought to daylight by introspection or some other mental act, consists in developing the paradoxical consequences of such a view. How can the process of reading have been hidden when I said, "No, I am reading because I was reading"? And if I say it is hidden, then how do I know what I have to look for? Here, understanding is replaced by reading. T. So far, we have shown by a kind of empirical investigation into the use of the word reading that there is not a mental content which is always present when a person is reading, and that therefore giving it the criterion for a person's reading cannot consist in pointing out a particular mental content. No. We should show that even if there were a mental content which is present if and only if a person is reading, we could not take this content to be the essence of reading. 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 think reading there could be quite a good stop.
Reading.
Reading. Reading.
Reading. Reading. Page. Page.
459.
459. Reading. So come on. Noun here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 lines down.
Indeed. The essence of reading, 7 lines down. Very good, thank you very much. Very good. I will now go for some outtakes, some perspectives of the text we just read. If I may, Ms. Kalle Lundahl, if you would be so kind to direct the pages. And let's see what sort of quotes I will opt for. What sort of quotes will I opt for? Let's see. Well, we have one already at page 453. It's very hard to refer in this text. The paragraphs are rather long. So I try something new this time. This will be like the 9th line from the bottom. Well, you actually, where you are now, it's not too far. If you just, yeah, a little bit, yeah. Yeah. This, yeah, that's good. I'm going to start mid-sentence here. This is a very long sentence. This is about the person reading Ali in Totalitarianism. Totalitarianism. And that he didn't read before he uttered these sounds and did not read afterward either. Although anybody who observed the outer behavior of P would be inclined to say that P had been reading the whole time. So imagine that you read some words and you just put the syllables together. Would that still be reading? According to MRP followers, it would still be reading, although you don't do the whole act. Sort of a mental process is still going on by itself. The second point here is, although anybody who observed the outer behavior of P would be inclined to say that P had been reading the whole time. So it's the partial reading also. And listen now carefully. It is the third person perspective. They will say reading's been going on all the time, in all examples. What we're looking here is the inner MRP, not what others are observing. But do not confound these two things, which is easily done, of course. They need to be kept apart. And I could say that the third person's perspective, which is absolutely normal in any language use, doesn't imply a mental process by itself. It just says something within the language game. Hans is reading a paper by Feyerabend, for instance. And on the next page, here is a very famous quote from Wittgenstein. It's about 10 lines down. Yeah. When our language suggests a body and there is none, there, we should like to say, is a spirit. This is a complicated remark I will do here, and obviously Wittgenstein is pointing to where we put spirit or a mental activity where there shouldn't be one, or at least not separably one by itself. But oddly enough, and this is the second leg of this take, something completely different. By saying that we have mental processes, we establish a psychology of the inner, a psyche, in the modern, is not modern way of it, not the ancient. And that, oddly enough, takes away the soul or the spirit here. So it's a bit of this it's a double blow by Wittgenstein here. The second is my own remark, of course, but it's to be beared in mind that psychology and psyche has replaced soul or spirit. If we go further down, we always, and this is a long sentence again, Feyerabend, why do you make the sentences so long? I will cut them apart. There's a couple of sentence lines down here, and beginning with whereabouts is 36 within citation mark. Go up a bit, maybe. I just saw it before. And now it disappeared. Very close to where we were before. Ah, there, 36. Stop there, and I read for like 7 lines down from that one. I did mid-sentence. We cling to the same scheme of explanation as in the physiological or the behavioristic theory of meaning. And this without realizing that we are doing so. So don't get confused here and think that these people or you yourself are actually literally having a behavioristic theory or a physiological theory of reading. No, that doesn't have to be present, but they are leading to these things. So to cut these conclusions short, it's like MRP is established in the language. MRP come to replace the spirit in the end. That's one of the conclusions you can actually make from this, according to me, of course. This is my personal view. Going to the next page, if you might, And the 5th line down, nevertheless, I was reading all the time, and it is quite certain that I was. Although the person were thinking of an excellent performance of Don Giovanni, the friend who didn't turn up, a funny misprint, and he started ha 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 laughing. That's ages ago since I laughed for a misprint. All those things are going on, but he still is reading. That's pretty decisive against the idea of MRP. You can still read. And if we go down to the bottom of this page, we have this person who utters English words ordinary letters one by one. Without really understanding. It's at 4 lines from the bottom of page 455. And there is somebody, a person has been put as a guinea pig, poor guy, to read one sound for each letter and put them together. And the question is, should we say in such a case that he was not really reading the passage? Should we here allow his sensation to count as the criterion for his reading or not reading? It is very, very, very hard to make a distinction here. It helps a bit if we go to the next page, or actually even the page after that. I just mentioned quickly that here is the question, should there not be a difference, because it's so hard to read, should there not be a difference between reading that odd sign, looks like an at sign, and the actual U sound in beautiful? And of course there is. But according to MRP, there is no difference. It's really the same thing. Although, obviously, there are different things going on here. Absolutely different things. Let's go to page 457. The third line here, it's very apt. Sounds very Wittgensteinian. We should not be misled by the picture which suggests that this phenomenon comes in sight on close inspection. And here comes the example. If I'm supposed to describe how an object looks from far off, I do not make the description more accurate by saying what can be noticed about the object on closer inspection. I think that's a very helpful thing. It is not, you cannot refer to something that is inside or closer by or much more into the thing. You need to do it where you are, and therefore you are not able to assume an MRP on top of the reading. You just read, this is what you do. There's no need for an MRP, but MRP could be present at some cases. But the propounders of MRP says the essentia is MRP. That means it always has to be present. We go down to the end of the cross 2 here, cross 2 paragraph. And starting from this, we have to conclude once more that the sensations experienced in connection with reading, and even those experienced as the essence of reading by the readers themselves, have nothing whatever to do with the question what reading really is. That's very good. And if we go down to 3 here, and that's the idea of you being guided by the MRP in some way. And let's let's see, 6, 7, 8 line. Does he say, I am being guided by the letters because the mental content being guided is present? Then one would have to conclude that every case of being guided is accompanied by being guided, as we assumed at the beginning of section C, that every case of reading is accompanied by the MRP. And here I have an example. Pfeiffer, think of his mobiles. When people see those mobiles, and I observe that myself with other people, when you show them, and I have shown them to AI specialists, I show them to computer specialists, they're all saying that the machines, the mobiles, are guided by CPU. CPU is an MRP here in this case, but they're not. They just move. There is no internal computer in the mobiles of Pfeiffer. They still learn, they still walk, they still find their way, they develop, and they interact. So all those things can be made without an inner CPU. This parallel is almost perfect. It has some holes, but it's very close. I think that's helpful for you listening. Well, at least I hope so. There's no inner mechanism in the AI of Pfeiffer. It's the movement that does it, that fractal, nice movement. Go to the next page. And here we really put to death the idea that MRP can exist by itself. Why would it? How would it? How could it? This, however, and this is like the 6th line, is not the case. Reading is inseparably connected with the MRP. What occurs separately from reading is not the MRP, but only an erroneous interpretation of something as reading. So this is the argument of inseparability. I'm so happy I was able to pronounce that, inseparability. We go to the next page. Just a quick look at D. We will continue with D next time. So far, we have shown by a kind of empirical investigation into the use of the word reading that there is not a mental content which is always present when a person is reading. And that, therefore, given the criterion for a person's reading, cannot consist in pointing out a particular mental content. And here, actually, Feyerabend / Wittgenstein kills 2 birds with one stone. Why? Well, he gets rid of the separable MRP that is residing inside, but he also kills off the idea of an ostensive definition that the objects out there are somehow inseparable from how we use them. The Augustinian ostensive definition gets its death toll here. And I think that is the endo-exo that you should remember. It's on what we, before we studied Wittgenstein, perceived to be 2 different sides, which are actually not 2 sides. But the endo and the exo are always coinciding to give the impression that both things are happening simultaneously. So that's the quote for this. Kalle, please, more than welcome to step in.
Thank you. Let's go to page 8 in the PDF. So it's page 455. 455.
455, okay, let's see.
So Feyerabend / Wittgenstein discuss the act of reading. So I can be reading while the milk is boiling.
Oh yeah.
Or I can also be thinking about the watch. So it doesn't matter if I'm focused on reading. I can be focused to 99%, but you can never be focused to 100%. Except perhaps if you are Buddha. But I don't think it's not possible even in that case. So what is the point of this? You could say that reading, or the so-called mental act of reading, is always entangled with the surroundings.
Yeah,
So the key word here is entanglement. So the mental processes of reading is always entangled with environment. Even an Indian here, you mention often the Indians in India, that they can do yoga and be completely focused, but they still are aware of the surroundings.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So
it's the endo exo. Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good.
There is no mental act of reading. So how do you then define the word reading? So it's not a inner thing. It's everything, including the surroundings.
Yeah.
It's everything, like your posture, you watch, the milk that is boiling. It's everything included, and it's a fluid thing. That is, I think, a good word also. Entanglement and fluidity. There is no fluid. We know what reading is in everyday language.
Yeah, of course.
But it's a fluid thing. And another thing that is fluidity, relative fluidity is on the next page, I think. The next page is about this U, and he uses as an example. Let me see, where did he have this? Perhaps this was on the yeah, big. No, but where is the thing with the EU? Let me see, it was. Let me see, he was discussing you. No, it was here for the next page, but I think about a beautiful girl. Let me see, was it here? With a beautiful girl, did it disappear?
A beautiful girl, yes.
The example with the beautiful girl, pronunciation of the let me see, no, I went too far. The beautiful girl and its pronunciation. Let me see if it will disappear. You found it, house. The beautiful girl. It was in the beginning of the page. But which page was it? Here. This is page PDF 9. In the printout, it's 456. So it's the next page. 456. So it's about this sign. You could pronounce as a U, let's say, and the reference to the U in beautiful. So here you could say that there is no essence of reading, really. There is no atomic, because this is like an atomic sound, atomic reading, you could say like that. So you could say the key thing is here is that the line between reading and non-reading is fluid, and as reading and misreading is also fluid, and the line between reading and misreading is fluid. That's, I think, is my conclusion. So let me repeat it, that the line between reading and non-reading is fluid, reading and the line between reading and misreading is also fluid. And it's not mental, of course. It's everything, the context included.
Yes, it takes in everything. It's quantum relativity, it's the wholeness of everything, it's the global reality. Everything is taken into consideration.
And let me ask you a general question. So Wittgenstein, they both
A
much
bit
space.
slower. Kalle,
Yes.
a bit slower. You're breaking
So
up now. A
so
bit
now
slower.
a general question. So Wittgenstein / Feyerabend consecrate much time and space to refute the private language argument.
Yes.
But why do they so? Why is it so dangerous? Why is private language so dangerous as a thing, so to say?
Very good question. And it was mentioned in the beginning here. I'll give some examples here, although it's a bit tough to answer the question in that general sense because it only has specific answers. But I will give it a try to give a general answer to that. It doesn't have one though. As I said, with the private language, we become inclined to explain things either with psychology or behaviorism. And with Wittgenstein, we come to understand that behaviorism and psychology, or could be physiology, are actually based on the same misunderstanding of a private language. There are two different solutions. So it leads to philosophical problems. We know psychology and behaviorism leads both to paradoxes that cannot be solved. Homunculus is one in the case of psychology. Where do we perceive inside of ourselves and so on? And how come the outer world is so separable from us? So we don't have to be here. And in the behavioristic take is, of course, the view from nowhere. This is an illicit move to do that I answer that question, but other ways of answering it could be, why do we have reductionism why do we have reductionism, empiricism, or epistemological thinking versus idealism? So we will not end in these things. We will not end in those quagmires or holes from which there are no escape. You will just go deeper and deeper, and either you end up as Noam Chomsky or you end up as a behaviorist. So that was my try at a general answer for that question, where there is none. I hope you were satisfied with that, Kalle.
Yes, it's very good, excellent. So let's try to spontaneously say something to those who believe in psychology. The thing is that we could compare with the inner processes with psychology and like with reading that we had here.
Yes.
So they would say the problem is only in his head, not in the, let's say, in the surroundings, and they would reduce it to one a piece, anatomic essence.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That is perhaps the atomic you in this case.
Definitely, yeah.
Like
You could actually, if you say You can think of the IPA, the International Phonetical Alphabet, or the International Phonetic Association. You know those signs.
Mm.
So
Yes.
they are supposed to be some sort of atomic signs for all languages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it's not, yeah, they're close to it.
So we could say, in short, these two arguments, I guess, psychology is kind of atomism essence.
Oh
So the
yeah,
very small bits, and they secondly don't take in psychology doesn't take in consideration surroundings. And
yeah, very good. Yeah, I think we'll end there if you're satisfied.
Thank you,
Kalle.
thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Kalle Lundahl, participating in this discussion. Thank you everyone for listening in or watching in. Have a beautiful morning, day, or afternoon, wherever you are. Bye bye for now.